Hi, and welcome to today's webinar on reading diagnostics in 30 minutes. I'm here with Steve Tattum, Reading Director of LearnUp Centers and author of the founder of the Tattum Reading System. We're excited to present this, this webinar to you. But before we get there, I want to talk a little bit about how this webinar works. As you go through, please feel free to raise your hand. You can ask a question at any time. Use the chat feature. I'll put in any sort of relevant handouts or links to things in there as we're going along. Please ask hard questions. We understand that our approach is unorthodox, and if you've been working in phonics and teaching reading for a while, you might find some of these things of interest to how we got there and why we're doing it this way. There'll be time for Q&A at the end. Steve will talk for about 50 minutes and then allow for questions. We will record this webinar, so you will get a link in your email tomorrow. LearnUp Centers is a nonprofit reading clinic based in San Francisco in the Bay Area. We have now gone online as of March 16th, as much the world is. We're based we're now dispersed throughout the Bay Area as our tutors many have gone home, some in Texas and Colorado. We are on a mission to teach all levels and types of learners to read. We do that through one-on-one tutoring, and in the last 4 or 5 weeks, we've moved everything online. We are super excited today to announce that we're also moving our trainings online, and we're going to do that starting on Monday with a free webinar. It's a 3-week webinar that will teach all of our whole phonics, structured phonics program, from how to do your sounds to reading comprehension. And it's the same exact program that we do when we're teaching our tutors or if we're doing a training for educators. And I'm going to have Steve talk a little bit more about it, but we're super excited, and the registration has opened, and I'll put that in the chat. Steve, you want to talk about that for a second?
Sure. Yeah, with the situation going on with the virus, 30% of people are out of work. And there's parents who just can't afford to get tutors at this point, and there's teachers that can't. Number one, the private schools, a lot of their money is being taken because people are wanting refunds, so money's not available for this. So basically, we have a lot of people that can't take advantage of phonetic programs. So we decided to address that specifically, and I think for the first time ever, giving a systematic phonics program, which would normally cost anywhere between $1,600 to $4,000, depending on when you take it, and might take you years to get. What you'll get with us in a week of intensity. Now, we will require that you watch videos, an hour or so of work during each day. It's going to be very intense, but we're also including free our lessons manual, 3 reading series, a phonetic book, and a movable alphabet board, so you can do the entire program day one once you're through with the program. So our goal is to get people to be able to use it and help kids. We have other materials we'll talk about that we sell. We've written somewhere about 11 reading series. So we're given 3, actually 3, and then a novel for higher kids, older kids. That's phonetically controlled. But we're excited about it. We're already getting individuals as far as India signing up, Canada, Massachusetts, etc. So we think this is going to be really valuable. So that'll start next Monday from 2 to 4 California time, and that'll run 3 weeks. We will have off Memorial Day, but that's it. So now this testing is kind of a precursor to it in many ways, and people going to webinar, I'm going to ask to watch this because this talks about our theoretical difference from a lot of systematic phonics programs. So I think we will just kind of launch into it.
And let me just finish here really quick, Steve. So we look forward to seeing you there, and if you have any questions, you can reach out to us at by email or chat. So I want to just really introduce Steve again. So Steve is Reading Director at LearnUp Centers. He's an author of our reading system. He's an orton-gillingham expert, and he's also a dyslexia expert. And what I like about this approach to reading is that we're looking to figure out where in the reading spectrum a child is so we can get going as quickly as we can to teaching them to read. And Steve's methodology is helps us do that very quickly. So Steve, let me give you control of the board and off you go.
Yeah. Yeah, just a quick note. We're in the program. I actually worked with multiple schools on teaching them systematic phonics, directed reading, and whole language, because the school would have kids at various levels. So I've worked in all elements. The systematic phonics program I used was the Orton-Gillingham based alphabetic phonics out of Scottish Rite. But I've also worked with Slingerland, Wilson, Project Read, and the original Green Book. So very familiar with Orton. This is an Orton-based program. I look at it, it's a 21st century Orton base that's been modified by Dr. Shaywitz's research and the research that's come out of the Reading League, et cetera. And then my own background of working for over 40 years with kids with dyslexia. Okay, now, so what you'll receive in the course is this Tattum's Lessons book that will have daily lessons, and really is everything you need will be in that book, and that'll be part of the course next week. We're always going to start with the 5 starts. Now, the reason we do this is where we save a lot of time. Steve, you can see the 5 starts?
Yes.
Okay. So, and basically in my half-hour testing, I want to know if the child is a start 1. I mean, if they're a pre-reader and they're 4 years old, I know where they're at, 4 or 5. But a lot of our kids are in 1st grade, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, up through high school. And I want to know if they're a start 1, which means they really can't read and they don't know all their consonants and vowels, and that's slow go. This is what many of the systematic programs were made for, and they start at 1 consonant a day to approach this. Now, even with these kids, I don't start with that. For a kid who knows nothing, I do 4 consonants and 1 vowel and get them reading a book with these 5 sounds day 1. So, because I believe the pragmatic use of phonics is crucial from the very beginning. So that's start 1. Now, start 2 is kids, you've seen a lot of these, kids at 1 syllable stage that can read can and pup and run and sip, maybe even some blends, but they're stuck there. And so they're reading around, you know, the end of 1st or so. And these kids, most of them, I clean up all their consonants and their vowels and even their consonant teams the 1st day. And then we get them going into a book and we're off and running. I showed that in webinar 1 on teaching all the consonants and vowels in a day. And we'll be reviewing that in the workshop coming up next week. Start 3 are kids that actually can do the 1-syllable words and are beginning to do some 2-syllable words, but they're stuck at 2 syllables and they're not always accurate and they don't really have a method. They just kind of figure it out. But they're ready to make big jumps at start 3. And so we start them, clean up all their consonants, their vowels and their consonant teams like CH, SH, TH, etc. And we also teach them how to break words down. We do all that the 1st day, okay? Start 4 is a child that's often had a good Wilson program or LIPS program or Project Read. And, you know, they may have stopped tutoring a while ago and they have gaps. But when somebody's from a good phonics program, what I find is their consonants are clean, their vowels are pretty clean. They know the R family. They know the diphthongs. And some of them know some of the vowel teams. So I give them credit for everything they know and start reviewing that daily and then put in a book that presses them at the highest level that they are fluent, somewhat fluent at. So that may be the diphthong book, which is written around 4th grade, or maybe the R family book written around 3-5 or so, whatever book they're at. So we're starting day 1 way ahead. And we start phrase reading with them in the 1st week. And then start 5 are kids that really don't have phonetic problems, but they basically have some fluency issues. They're either reading real slow or comprehension, which is usually what we find. This is a kid that we're told, hey, you know, we don't understand it. He can read fine. He can spell fine, but he just doesn't understand what he reads. And this is a whole nother issue. This child often is more of a left hemisphere child and has right hemisphere deficits that deal with the affective nature of text and the subtle comprehension of text, the more abstractions, and they're having trouble in that area, and they need direct instruction and comprehension. By the way, not everyone needs direct instruction and comprehension. There are many kids that just naturally will understand what they read because they understand oral language like they read, like they hear it. This is not always the case that kids need instruction. So that's the 5 starts that we're looking at. Now, why that's important is the 5 starts will show us where they are in the phonetic scope and sequence. Now, here is my phonetic scope and sequence, okay? It's 25 concepts, and I have books from my program that correlate to it. So if you're at concept 1, you're at a start 2, and you're at a concept 1, you could be using any of these books to the left or to the right, okay? These are different series. Hot Tub is actually from the series Carnival, which people in the course next week will receive. And that, I think, has 18 books. And it starts in like 5 or 6 closed syllable books, and it moves up to diphthongs. We have Ocean Fun and Sick. That's another series, Long Ball, etc. So if we're at a start 1 or a start 2, and we're clean up all the consonants and vowels, we'll get in one of those books right off the bat. We'll check a 1-minute reading, get their words per minute, and we're off and running. Then as you move through the series, we have books that are addressing concepts as you move through the series. Notice I have a high school series as well. The Fog is from Moonlight Tales, which is our more evolved series, kind of like a Harry Potter series or a Hardy Boys series that works on a team that solves problems. And then we have for girls, the Sock Hop, which is part of Sunlight Tales, which is for older girls. Can't Read is one book written for high school kids and adults, and then The Earth is historical fiction written for high school students. So you basically, once you know the start in your closed syllables, you'll pick a book that doesn't insult the child, that's at their level. So a lot of like 9th graders would like the Moonlight Tales or the Sock Hop, but somewhat nonfiction like The Earth, which is historical fiction, okay? So it's crucial for the start. If I have a start 3, what that means is that I'm going to clean up the consonants, teams, and vowels, and I'm going to teach how to break words down. I call it the vowel tag. That was introduced the 2nd webinar. And that teaches them how to break words down. Day 1, we do this, okay? And then we put them in a vowel tag book. If they're older, it'd be like Ghost Ship, or a girl, maybe Raft Trip. If they're younger, Rascal the Pup. So we're moving ahead in the series. Now, we still clean up some of the previous concepts, but notice that the yellow or gold is going ahead of some of the spelling rules here. And the reason is that reading can go ahead of spelling. I call it the yellow brick road. So when your reading takes off, you can jump over the spelling, get ahead in your reading. So you may be in diphthongs and reading, but still not dealing with what I call the hungry rule, which many people call the floss rule, and the tricky trio, TCH, CH, DGE, GE, etc. But in other words, reading can go ahead of spelling. Now there's a reason for that. Reading is matching to your oral language, which is in your head. So you're sounding out words, and when it approximates, sounding out should not be perfect, it's approximation. When it approximates the word in your head, like abundance, you might have abundance, abundance. You can make the match, but spelling, you have to say the word correctly. You have to connect to the writing part of your brain. Remember the sequence while you're writing it. Remember any spelling generalizations and maintain the word as you're doing it. And that requires much more involvement. So this is our scope and sequence. Now, what I've found is that many programs take 2 years to get 2 years growth. Well, many kids don't have that time. You'll have a kid who has 1 year in school and moves out, and he may only learn in that program the consonants and blends. And so now he's out of luck. Or, if he's an older kid, after, a year of phonics, he gets bored and he's done. So what I've been striving for is to move the 2 years down. Initially, changes I made, I got it from 2 years to a year. Then I got it to about 6 to 8 months. And then I got it to less than 6 months. And now, pretty much, unless I have a child with severe dyslexia, we get 2 to 3 years growth in 2 to 3 months. That works because if you have a child in remediation, you can get them reading and out. And Brighton, Michigan, who's brilliant, head of reading literacy there, started the program. She was exiting kids out of special ed in 3 months, which had never happened before. And that's our goal, is to get a kid in and out. That does not mean the child can't come back for a tune-up or a review, but we get them reading. Then the goal is to get them to read good books. And we'll be talking about that in the next 3 weeks. What are some good series for kids to go to? So the idea of the start, which we're getting across here, start 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, immediately translates into where am I going to start the phonics program? What am I getting credit for? And what book? Because if he's a start 4 and he knows all the way up through what I call walkers, there's 7, actually 8 vowels that actually are walkers. The first one does the talking. And I just call them walkers because kids know that. And they're up to walkers. We may put them in a walker book if they can do all right, or a Martian raptor. And all this is the first day. So we catch up as much as we can on the phonics board and get them going where they're at. So this child who's starting at the diphthong book may finish the program in 6 weeks and raise their reading level 2, 3, 4 years, okay? So different philosophy, because many programs are into every kid's got to get a consonant a day and go through multiple ways of learning that. I have not found that to be accurate in my work with students, that kids must have that. And many of them think you must systematically follow the whole curriculum. What I've found is you can give the child credit for what they know and then clean up the sounds, cut off the uhs, and catch up, okay? So here's the 5 starts. We get them into the proper curriculum. Now, we want to check the child's sounds, and that's part of our testing, okay? Where we're checking the child's sounds. We'll do that after my survey, but since we're here, we will quick do it. And here's what I'm looking for. The child will go b, k, d, f, g, j, k, l, m, n, p, r, s, t, v, w, x, y, z, ch, sh, f, th, qu, n, nk, I, e, a, o, ow, oi. Okay, so I check it. Now, if a child's at start 2 and 3, I only check up to here. Consonants, teams, and vowels, and make sure. What I've found in almost all the cases with my start 2s that are one-syllable words, they know the sounds, they just put us after it. And that's because they were taught that way. Teachers, most of the teachers I get, and I've taught over 4,000 teachers, put us on sounds, ba, ka, da. So we have to clean it off. And I show cleaning it off by putting the scissors like 2 fingers in front of my mouth and cutting off the sound. But then I will say the sound, then the child will echo, and I clean them up real quick, clean them up, and then I do daily reviews with the sounds. Now that start 4 kid, I check all these, I check all these, I check the diphthongs, I check the R family, and here. And I've had many start 4s get this far. They don't know some of the yellows and reds, which are some of the more obscure sounds. Okay, so this is part of my test. Once I get a start, I check the child's sounds, okay? And again, when they go ma and na and pa, I take the board away and I say the sounds and have them echo. And I have yet to have a kid not be able to do this when I pull the board away. Go, buh, and they go, buh, d, and they go, d. They can hear the sound because their auditory system is intact. What was not intact was how they were taught. They were taught incorrectly. Again, most of the teachers I get put us at the end of the consonants, okay? All right. So now the beauty of like a start 4 moving ahead and getting them caught up here is we can go to the back side of the board right off the bat and work on these Latin endings and roots and prefixes and get him working with big, long words real quickly and work an advanced level of the program and not just be stuck with consonants, teams, and vowels, which happens in a lot of programs, okay? So in other words, by giving kids credit for what they know, we can move quicker and farther into the program. We can also move quicker and farther in the books and in writing. All right, now here's the quick survey. This is how I start before I check the sounds. Okay, so the child will first say these words. Let me give an example of a child I just saw. Wed, ox, heap, fan, buzz. All right, let's read the passage. It can be bad to jet, mad, and have a it, but it is bad to be sad. So we'll read the passage, then I'll try these words, and often the child will go dump, zets, kilk, thirst, popped. Okay, so he's stuck around here, which if you'll look at here, it says if you're stuck here, you're a start 1 or 2. This child could actually sound out some words and sound out some words, so he would be what I call a beginning start 2. A beginning start 1 couldn't really sound out any of these words and might just go weeb, FX. Just can't do it. That's a start 1. So once I find that start, I'm done with this test once I get the start. Now, so start 1 can't really do this. Start 2 can do this. The sentence breaks down a little here. Advanced start 2 does this and does pretty well on this, can read this okay, but breaks down on silent E and the VCCV rule that I break down here. So there's still a start 2, but I will tell my clinicians, hey, this kid's a start 2, but you can move fast with him because he's got some good skills below. All right, my start 3 will often do well here, pretty well here. He might have trouble with prompt. He might call this ever, drove, crude, flame, crime, don't, win, mop, and grip at the rugged spots in life, make the best of life's problems and cope with them, take time to think of fiends and be useful. Now notice he got some of the real words for silent E, but couldn't do whine, mope, and gripe. The reason I put those there is they're not normal words you see. And so that'll let me know, does he really know the silent E or has he just memorized these words? So he's memorized these, but he's got some reading skills below. Then he might go happen, calyps, suppers, describe, difficult. Why he gets difficult, I don't know, but sometimes they get it. So then I have him read the passage. Admon your mystics. Try not to make excas. We must research the inns in the desert to blame someone else when we're wrong. So obviously they're breaking down at the two-syllable word silent E. This is a start 3. So with the start 3 again, I would go back, check his consonants, his teams and vowels. Usually they're pretty good, but I have to cut off the Us. I clean these up. And when I start the lesson, I'm going to teach him how to break down two-syllable words with the start 3, day 1. He'll be a better reader the first day. Now the start 4 will do pretty well on 1 through 25 usually. They may have trouble with typhoid, but they'll be reading 13, Forsooth Outlaw. They might call it typhoid, or more likely they'll call it typhid. And then I'll ask them what OI says, and if they go oi, they'll get the word footgear. And then they might not get argue. They might say agree, but they'll get railroad, perceive. May struggle with exploitation, but when I ask them what OI says, they'll get it, and maybe supervision. And then they break down here. I might have them try to read this paragraph. Try not to agree or complain. Train yourself to pause and reflect about other people's approaches to issues. Different opinions and versions don't have to be a nuisance, okay? So obviously having trouble. This is written, this passage written around 6th. So he knows how to break down words. He knows some vowel teams, etc. He can read harder passages. So again, with that child, when I go and check on the board, I check his consonant teams and vowels. Often he aces it. I check the R family. Usually that's not a problem. I check the diphthongs. Often he knows that. And he knows these walkers often. So I give him credit for all that, day 1. And I'm going to start him with how to break down two-syllable words, day 1. And maybe even start phrasing with him. We'll see.
Steve, can I jump in here with a question?
Sure.
So if a student can sound out the words whine, mope, and gripe, but is very laborious and not automatic, does that count as correct or not, or how do you make that determination?
Yeah, I count that as correct because keep in mind, this is not an objective test. It's subjective. What I'm looking at is clinical. I'm looking at, does he know what the E does? And if he sees gripe and goes grr, that means he knew what the E was. He had a little trouble with blends. He had trouble with the more complex word, but he knows what the E does, and that's what I'm looking for. And if he goes, op, I give him credit, yeah. So what I'm really looking for, and it's usually pretty clean, to be honest. A start 2 is pretty much like I said. They're broken down in those first 10 words. A start 1 is broken down in the first 5. A start 3 starts breaking down a little at silent E and some of the two-syllable words. And it's pretty straightforward. They may get footgear, the start 3, but they obviously have trouble with the teams. And a start 4 will do pretty well. But yeah, this is more clinical. You know, it's not like, okay, if he gets 2 errors here and 2 errors here, he's this start. There's an approximation that I give you on the test, but it's an approximation. I'm looking at, where is this kid living? Is he living at all? Or is he just guessing at words and know a few consonants or vowels? That's a 1. Is he living in the one-syllable world? Start 2. They're pretty obvious. Is he trying to live in the two-syllable word but doesn't know other vowel teams and pairs? Okay, that's pretty clear as well. Is he now a reader but has gaps, isn't fluent, but knows a lot of stuff? And again, often these kids have been through phonics tutoring. I mean, I've had people I check on that, and I'll have the parent call the tutor and say, Ben, you did a bang up job. Because the kid knows everything, he just can't apply it. So yeah, I've had many people from Orton tutors come to me and they are just bang on their consonant teams, vowels, and R family and diphthongs. They just haven't done enough reading, because often what will happen in phonics is we get so caught up in phonics, we don't have time to read a book. We read words, but not a book. In my program, at least 20, the 30 minutes is involved in reading with a written response. Okay, so we now know an approximate start from this test and this. Okay, so now we're going to look at the tower. And we didn't give you a copy of the tower because we don't own it. That's something you have to get up yourself. But the tower is just a quick hitter. And here it's real words. On my be old warm bone most spell. Okay, cool. Then we time them for 45 seconds to see how many words they read. Now here's what I'm looking for with the tower. This kid's a start 2. In other words, he can only do one syllable words, and he primarily knows short vowels. But when he does this, he goes in, is, up, cat, read, me, too, no, we, he, thee, and, yes, of, him, as, book, was, help, then, time, would, let, men, baby, knew, stop, work, jump, art, fast, find, milk, act, back, lost, find, paper. He's reading words he has no business reading based on his testing. That, I get thrilled when I see that, because that means the word form area may be firing. Okay. Now, let me talk again about the word form area for a second. It is the single most important thing about the child is the word form area firing. This is from Dr. Shaywitz's work, but it has been reviewed by Marion Wolf and by others, and is a very valid situation. And what it is this. When you read your temple, which is Broca's area, everyone touch that. I tell people it's Broke in kids that have trouble, and I only say that to help them remember Broca. But this is what sounds out words, and this is what helps with parts of speech. So this is sounding out words, and it's connected to your mouth through the brain. And when you sound out a word, it goes above Wernicke's area, which is I call the language area. So this you can call the sound out area. And this is the language area, and you know the word. So you sound out jump, jump, oh, that's jump. Asked, oh, that's fast. Okay. Crust, oh, that's crust. Okay. Now, with normal first graders, once they do this for a while, by the 3rd trimester, some much earlier, but by the 3rd trimester, an area behind and below the ear where the occipital and temporal lobe touch is called the fusiform gyrus, or the word form area. We can just call it the word form area. What the word form area, it starts stimulating once you do this a lot. It stimulates and remembers the word. And once it starts remembering, you don't need 5 to 8 looks. Studies are indicating as little as 1 to 3 looks at a word and you remember it, which is huge, because when you see a word, it goes back to the back of the brain. Then it has to come back up to sound out, process, and then connected. But when your word form area is firing, it comes back to the brain, to the word form area, and you read. It's huge. I can't say it enough. Huge. So this child who's remembering some sight words, now I'm going to be interested when I give him a few spelling words to see if he has a sight word memory for any spelling words. Because if he does, that tells me his word form area is the process of firing, even though he's at start 2. And I'll tell the tutor, look out for the word form, move quickly. Because when the word form area hits, he'll go triple the speed that he was going. It's miraculous. It's truly, and that's where people get all these great successes. Oh, my kid went up 6 years. Well, his word form area fired. You know, it's what happens. Okay. I mean, we had a kid come in at 1st grade level. He was a 3rd grader. And in 20 some hours, his word form area fired the first week. And in 20 some hours, he finished my 1st grade series, which goes to 5th grade, and was above fluency for his grade level. And, you know, hooray, aren't we great? We're miracle workers. Well, no, the word form area fired. We know what to do when it fires, but it's important. So that's what we're looking for in this diagnosis. Is the word form area firing? If it's not, They're going to sound out a word like crush, crush. When they see it again, they'll go crush. When they see it again, they'll go crush. You know, it's just the way it is. Okay. Now, to do a sight word program with kids like this is a disaster, absolute disaster, primarily a sight word. This kid needs systematic phonics program to stimulate the word form area, to do just a few sight words needed for reading, but to do systematic phonics. But you do a sight word program, it'll look like he's learning it, and he's going to forget them all because it's just not firing. So there are programs that take for granted that's working. Some of the whole language programs, of course, take for granted it's working. Some programs that focus on visualizing words and saying words believe it's working. And how it works, contrary to common sense, is to not work on the visual memory of words, but to work on phonological processing through a good systematic phonics program in reading. There is something you can help with this called orthographic mapping, which the Reading League talks about, and I'll get into that in the workshop. Okay, so let's go back. So
Let me jump in here with another question really quick, Steve.
Okay.
So if you missed our first webinar, that webinar was on how to teach the consonants and vowels the first day. So that you should go back and review that. I put that in the chat. And then I have a question from Grace who's asking, what do you do with students that cannot connect or remember words they've repeated?
Okay. Well, that's the point. If their word form area is not working, they'll sound it out. And I just let them sound it out. Now, when I take over reading and I read, I will leave that word out to see through context if he can get it. But often they end up sounding it out again. You can't rush the word form area, okay? You can teach some sight words through orthographic mapping, which we'll talk about. But basically, he'll be sounding the word out. Then when I take over, because I take over every time he makes two struggles, when I take over, I will either leave that word out or read it fluently to reinforce it. And then I give it back to him. So I don't know if that answered your question or not. Did I, Grace? Tell Steve that.
Thanks.
Yeah?
Great, thank you.
All right, nonsense words, the tower. This again is 45 seconds. The child here can say bat or bay. You know, it should be bay, of course. It's open syllable, but they allow bat or bay. Fas, gan, rup, nas, bloody, dord. Okay, so now we time in. Of course, this is where kids totally fall apart.
Steve, if you want us to see that, it's not up on your screen.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, so we started with the practice. This could be bat or bay. They allow both forms. Fas, gan, rup, nas, luddy, dord. Okay, so the child has 40 seconds to go as far as he can. And what I'll see is that start 2 or 1 will be going like ip. It might go ga or gay. Okay, at, guy, in, im, wum, tell, fab, din, nup. So notice he's mixing up the letters. He's not sounding it out correctly. And he may get 6, you know, which is like it before first grade. Okay. But some kids will just nail this thing and get like all the way to here. That'll be like my start 4s. They'll just kick. Some start 5s who don't need phonics will do real well on this as well. Now, there are kids that don't do well on this that are reading just fine, thank you. They had problems in the phonological level, but their word form area worked, and they learned to read through sight words. And at 7th grade, they're doing well reading, and they're tested, and they do low on this test, so they put them in a phonics program. Terrible. The kid, there's so many things you can do with 7th grade reading to help, you know, his fluency, et cetera, that you should be working on. But Now, if his spelling is terrible, which can happen, you should do a quick review of the phonics, but not a complete phonics program, a 2-year deal that, you know, maybe a month or 2 on the phonetic spellings. But anyway, this test confirms my start 1, 2, 3, or 4 because he's struggling here. He can't do anything. He's my start 1. Often with start 1s, I don't even try it because I know they can't do it. The start 2 will get some of the short vowels right. Start 3 will get a little further in this. Start 4s may do pretty well. They may do things like craddy, trober, deepate, glant, sploosh, splush, drecker, dreaker. They may nail those, okay? That tells me I got a good start 4, okay? So why I do this is it's just a quick hitter. So I've got my survey. My survey, by the way, can take anywhere from 3 minutes with a start 1 or 2, you know, to 20 minutes or 15 minutes with a kid further up. This is just a couple minutes, okay?
So just a couple clarifying questions.
Sure.
So what do you suggest when students can segment the sounds correctly but can't blend it back? Seems like they can't hold on to the initial sound.
You know, that's funny because I've heard that before on Florida. This one clinic says that's like one of the toughest problems. I have not run into that for some reason. I've been doing this forever. I haven't found that a major issue, but I do address it every day when we work out words for the book. Because like if he has closed syllable words for the book, he'll sound out a word, rust, and go rust. Then I'll sound out the next word, and he has to say camp. So I work on it daily by sounding out, alternate sounding out words, and he has to tell me what the word is. So I'm picking it up that way on a regular basis. But I just haven't found it as an issue. Now, one of the issues can be they're too slow on saying the sounds. So they're going, pa, and forgetting what the first pa was, what it was. So they forget. And that's a matter of making it quicker, the sounds quicker. And again, we can address that in the workshop. But basically, I work on it when all my books have the words, the phonetic words before the chapter. And that's where I will always sound out a word and he has to say it, then he sounds it out. So I work on blending on a regular basis. Okay. Now, if he's reading and he blends a word like clam and he goes, clock, I'll quickly go, he ate a clam, and he'll go clam. What I did is I gave context to it. I said a couple words before it and quick sounded it out. And I will do that at times, okay? I do that with older kids with big words, like, let's say mitigation, which is a popular word today. Supposedly everyone is mitigating the disease. Yeah, right. But the child who has a good vocabulary might go, and I say, okay, we lessen things and we had a mitigation of the problem. Now, if he'd heard mitigation, context will help him get the word. And why I do that is to let him know that good word attack is approximation with context, not guessing. It's do the best you can and then go to your vocabulary in your head and go, what makes sense here that sounds like that? Okay. All right. So
Steve, let me ask you another question. What do you do with a student who can decode at grade level, for instance, 4th grade, but cannot spell the word that he can read?
Well, that's every kid that's the problem. If he reads fine, what I will do is we will do a start 4 approach. So I will put him in a high level of my books, check what sounds he knows, put him in a high level of my books, like Moonlight Tales if he's a 4th grader. So I'm pushing his reading, and then I'll quickly catch up the spelling. Now, that's why I have this checklist. I'm glad you asked that, by the way. Can everybody see the reading checklist here? Can you see that, Steve?
Sorry, it's me. Yes.
Okay. Now, The reading checklist is I took the yellow brick road out from here, which is the reading component, and I moved it to its own separate checklist. And in testing that kid, he was actually knew diphthongs, our family, et cetera, is it green walkers. I checked that. I catch this up, the reading, before I do any of the spelling. I quickly catch this up. It's stuff he's using, but he just doesn't know it. And I start the back side of the board right off the bat to make him a better reader. So that's doing this. I start him on these endings, et cetera, to push his reading. So I want to push his reading. But meanwhile, then once I've got caught up on his reading, I start picking up the spelling, and these are the spelling concepts. So reading is going ahead of spelling. I'll show that more in depth in the next 3 weeks in the workshop. Now, this principle came from Ayelet Cox, who was a brilliant Orton-Gillingham specialist, and she was the one I took beginning and advanced course and taught her system for years. She was brilliant. And she was the one who initially pointed to me that reading goes ahead of spelling. And that was very radical. This was back in the late 70s, and that was very radical for back then. And of course, I found this to be definitely true. You don't want to hold your reading because of the spelling. So somebody may be at Green Walkers for reading and be at spelling at Bully Roll, which you might know as the 1-1-1 rule or the doubling rule. Okay. So that's how I'll handle that kid. Now, if he's reading real fluently, and that's just not an issue, I'll just put him in, grade level or higher than grade level books and just kind of do the spelling and see if I can get a group of kids who need a review over these spelling concepts. Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Now, let's review. So we talked about how many times psychologists or diagnosticians will diagnose a kid, find the tower low on sounding out words, find some word attack low, and diagnose saying, this child needs X systematic phonics program. It's kind of like, here's your pill for the disease. But that doesn't work. Unless the child's just a start one or beginning two, most of the programs will address their concerns eventually. But it doesn't solve the problem for these upper starts. And it still doesn't go fast enough for the lowest starts. Again, keep in mind, most of these programs take 2 years to get 2 years growth. You got to hold the kid there. And many kids are transferring. Many older kids are not going to sit for 2 years doing the same thing, but they will sit for 2 to 3 months, which is what we do to get 2 to 3 years growth. By the way, older kids are easier than younger. You can make incredible progress with an 8th grader who's motivated. 9th grade. Their myelin sheath has covered their nervous system. They have great electrical impulses. They've also listened to words. They have a higher vocabulary, and many of them are motivated. I love working with older kids. And we actually have just, Detroit Public High Schools have just adopted this program through Beyond Basics to teach all the kids in Detroit high schools who are lower than reading. And the reason they chose ours is because of our results and how quick we get them. And also our materials, which I have materials for older kids. Okay. All right. So let's review. So we talked about, for us, my program, it's the idea getting the start is crucial. That takes practice. Once you have the start, determining what concept you're going to review. Here's the yellow brick road, which is the reading. You might have a child at start 3 who's ready for vowel tag. So we clean up the consonants, vowels, and teams, and the vowel tag, and we get him in a vowel tag book, and he's off and running. Then we start catching up the spelling as we go. Okay? This will tell us what book to go to. If he's younger, one of these. If he's older, one of these. I know the series well since I wrote them, so I'll often say this kid will love this series. But once you get familiar, you can move a kid. Okay? Now, once we've got that, we check the sounds. Usually we will clean up, check their consonants, teams, and vowels. Usually it's a matter of just cleaning them up. I have found, though, that a lot of kids have trouble with a and ah and I and eh. So I might have to give keywords for those. Normally I don't give keywords, and a movement for it, okay? They have a little trouble with that. Okay, so we do check the vowels. Then we do the reading survey. Actually, that's done first. Then we do the sounds. But the reading survey, I find out, is he struggling here? Start 1. Can he do this and some of this? Start 2. Can he do this, most of this, and some of this? Start 3. Can he do most of this and struggle here a bit? Start 4. Can he do the whole survey? Start 5. Okay. Now, I just tested a kid the other day who did pretty well all the way through here and read symmetrical, and I think he got optimistic, but did well on this. Had a little trouble with the visions and nuisance. He's comprehension's at 6th grade, and he got diagnosed to go to a systematic phonics program. Well, you know what? If they did a consonant a day, which most of them do, this poor kid would be bored to tears, and they wouldn't address his issue until he's in his 2nd year of the program. Whereas we would give him credit for all this, start him with the endings right off the bat, shun, ubble, ibble, sure, it's sure, and put him in a book written at around 6th grade phonetically, okay? So it's just a big difference. Once we've got the start, we then confirm it with the tower, and we're looking for the word form area, okay? Now there's one other thing I'll do to check the word form area and the phonics area. I give these words for spelling. Batch. What I'm looking for is, does the child use a CH or a TCH? Most of my twos will use a CH. Fudge. Do they use a J, a GE, or a DGE? Most of them use a J. Running. Do they double the N or not? Hoping. This kid today spelled it H-O-P-P-I-N-G. Doesn't know about silent E. Doesn't know about dropping it. Laugh. Does he have some sight word abilities? If kid gets laugh, I might say could, to see if he knows OU lazy dog words. There's 3 OU lazy dog words, O-U-L-D. Could, would, should. And I might give him an OU goofy hyena word. Those are O-U-G-H words, like thought, or bought, or enough, or though, and see if he has a memory for them. Okay? From that, I can see the child who did well on sight words at a start 2, who could also do, like, let's say, batch and running and laugh. Again, his word form area or her word form area may be firing. And that's important to know, because I'll always tell the tutors, hey, look out for that word form area. It's ready to go. And you know when it goes. The child will sound out a word and see it and know it. It's exciting when that happens. So we then give the tower to confirm. Okay. And then the last thing, I know we're just about out of time, but I just need to mention this, is, so while I'm getting this, I'd like you to take a minute and review the testing so far in your mind while I'm getting this.
Steve, do you have a copy of the words that you listed for
I'll say
spelling?
them again. Batch, fudge, running, hoping, laugh. Those are the basic ones. To see if they know the rules, TCH, CH, DGE, GE, doubling, dropping, and if they're sight word. Then if I got a wise guy who's just nailing all of them, sometimes I'll get somebody, but man, this kid can spell. I'll get them rhythm. I've never had a person spell rhythm correct in 40 years, ever, unless I teach it. And I'll have some kids come close, and that's telling me, boy, they've got pretty good word formulary. I might also throw in an OU lazy dog word, could, which is C-O-U-L-D, OU lazy dog, and an OU goofy hyena word, OUGH word like thought or enough. Those are words kids have trouble with. Just to see what their sight word is like. This kid today I did it with did real well on both of those, could and though and thought. So that tells me his word formulary is cooking, you know.
So Steve, can you talk just for a second about with the methodology that's used for increased comprehension? So I understand that we have a comprehension program that you might want to mention. And is the word formulary brought online by the repetition, or what else brings that to fire?
Okay.
It's kind of two questions.
All right. Can you see this test packages, Steve?
You mean that? I'm sorry. No, now I just see you.
All right. This, you can see this?
Yes.
Okay, good. All right. So the comprehension program, once we have it, is its own program. That'll be covered on Wednesdays in the workshop. And it involves vocabulary development, idioms, the idea of transition words like and, but, or, nor, for, pronoun usage, and background, a lot on background. And then the type of thinking structures, 4 thinking structures, such as somebody did something because, here is the cause, here are the effects, etc. And then we teach the 9 essential comprehension skills by modeling. And then when we're done reading, we go through the W's to check what we know and main idea. And then we'll do deep reading, where we look at feelings, perspective taking, and evaluation for kids once they're a certain level. And for those who need study skills, we teach 3 key study skills. That's part of the comprehension program, okay? And we do writing, how to write a hamburger, which is a small 1-paragraph essay. Okay. Now, the other thing you want to pair this with in this is these 3-minute tests through Scholastic, 3-minute readings. And what it amounts to is the child, they have different grade levels. So this is like Form A, 4A, 4th grade A. And even if the child's a low reader, we'll give him his grade level form and we'll time him. So in this case, the child would read, if he's a start to, family trips are imp to my words. So they get 10 words per minute. Then we read the rest of the passage to them, and they then have to give us a summary. And this is really telling, because I have kids who are start 2s, and they'll give me 15 facts. One of them even gave me 2 quotes from the article from memory. And then I'll ask, like, what's the main idea? And see if they can nail that. And any inferences, an inference question. If they can do that, that's like a perfect score if they nail a lot. But I'll have some kids who can read this well, can only give me 2 sentences from memory. And like, that's a comprehension 1. So this has a scoring system of 1 to 6 for comprehension. And then it has a fluency system of 1 to 4 points for 4 areas. But in general, how I found it is if a child's at a start 1 or 2, they usually are a 4. They're like a 1 in all categories. And if they're a start 3, they're usually at an 8, closer to an 8 points, 2 for each category. If they're a start 4, they may be at 12 or between 8 and 12. And if they're at a start 5, they might ace the whole thing for fluency. So you get a fluency comprehension score, and it's wonderful, and it's short and sweet. So this lets me know where he's at grade level. It also gives us a pretest. And then from this and from the starts, I go to a book that I think the child will start with in the reading, and I time him for 1 minute to get his words per minute in the book as our basal for my reading series. So this kid who's a start 2, I might have put him in Ghost Ship, which is written at 2.5. he might read 35 words a minute with 3 errors. So I'll graph that. 35 words, 3 errors at GoShip. And then while we're reading GoShip, we do timed readings weekly. And what we'll find is words per minute go way up, errors go less. As we move through books, words per minute will drop and then go back up. So, so that's the survey. So we're looking at their phonological characteristics, their sounds by the board, their phonological reading through my survey, where they are and what start, how they are at pure phonics blending, how they are in real word, this is real word, how they are in real word and blending. If there's a difference here, they can't read hardly anything phonetically, but they remember sight words. That may mean their word for area is coming. And then from there, I then go to the 3-minute reading to get a sense about grade level where they're at. And then I pick a book and time them. And again, this will often take about 30 minutes, depending. If a child's a start 4, it might take a little longer, but a start 2 or 3, my survey will only take 5 minutes. The tower will take 3-4 minutes. The board will take a couple minutes. The 3-minute test will take you 4 or 5 minutes. And then the book will take you a couple minutes. And we easily get it done in 30 minutes. At the clinic, we give these for free to people as a community service, and then tell them what we think they need. So this is really an important springboard for the next 3 weeks of workshop, those who are going to take it. Those who haven't taken this, I'll have them go back and watch this, because this sets what really separates our program from other programs. And it's considered controversial, but for me, it's common sense with experience. And our research supports it. So there was a 5-year study done in Michigan that showed on the MAP test that kids who went through this program went up 50% on their reading scores, which was quite amazing. And we've had a lot of different tests. So anyway, any other questions, Stephen?
So I was just answering in the chat box. So how often do we assess these or monitor for growth?
About every 20 hours of work. We'll do the towers and we'll do the oral reading, and then we do a reading in our book. The reading with our books are the most practical look because they follow a regular system of grade level. But since we're doing them daily, there's no pressure on it, and we'll see tremendous growth in that transfers to any other novel. The tower is always the slowest to grow. The woodcock does much better than the tower in terms of growth. The reason is the tower requires speed of processing, which kids with phonics problems don't have. And that takes a while to develop. So that is slow go for a lot of our kids, the tower. Okay. Anything else?
So I think that's it.
Great.
Any other questions from our attendees? We do.
Okay. Well, thanks for coming. This has been a good review for me and for you guys as well. I hope it's helpful to you.
And let me really quickly go and do a last slide here. I don't know if you can see that, but I'd like to thank everybody for being here today. And if you want to know more about what we're doing at LearnUp Centers and working with Steve Tattum, you can go to our website at www.learnupcenters.org.